I funded every family vacation, holiday, and event for years. This time, I spent weeks planning the perfect retreat, down to every little detail, but they dumped me without warning. So I did something no one in my family expected. I sent them invoices with interest. Here's exactly how it started. I pulled up to Willow Springs Retreat, this stunning mountain lodge tucked away in Asheville, North Carolina. I had spent weeks planning this family getaway, booking every little detail from the chef-prepared meals to the yoga instructor. I had paid nearly $4,000 upfront because, of course, no one else in my family ever offered to chip in. It was supposed to be our annual tradition, a weekend to reconnect and relax, to sit by the fire and laugh over board games, just like Grandma used to host before she passed away. I stepped out of my car, my heart racing, butterflies swirling in my stomach, excited to surprise everyone with the setup. The air smelled like pine and fresh rain, the kind of scent that makes you feel instantly at peace. I walked toward the main lodge, expecting to hear laughter, footsteps, voices, but instead, it was dead silent. Not a single person in sight, no cars in the lot, no bags by the door. My stomach dropped. I checked my phone. No missed calls, no texts, nothing. I waited a few minutes, telling myself maybe they were running late or out on a walk. Still, something didn't sit right. Eventually, I called my mom. She answered after a few rings, sounding like she'd been in the middle of a party. I asked where everyone was, my voice shaking. She chuckled, and said, "Oh, honey, we decided to move the gathering to Hannah's cabin instead. It's closer for everyone, and more convenient. We figured you'd understand." My heart froze. I was standing alone in a venue I had paid for, where I had spent weeks organizing every single thing while my entire family was having a party without me. They hadn't even told me. They hadn't even bothered to ask. My mom casually mentioned they'd be sure to bring me some leftovers like she was offering me a favor. I hung up the phone in complete shock, staring at the empty tables I had decorated with candles and family photo center pieces, realizing right there in that moment, this wasn't just about one retreat. It was about every single time they had excluded me, every time they had taken advantage of me, every time they had made me feel like I didn't matter. But what they didn't know was, this time, I wasn't just going to let it slide. And that's where it all began, because before this weekend was over, I would finally make them listen. I would make them pay attention, and everything they thought they knew about me, that was about to change forever. Speaking of which, let me tell you exactly how we got to this point. I guess to really understand how this all started, you need to know a little more about my family. I'm Rachel, Dawson, the middle child, which pretty much says it all if you've ever been stuck in that spot. My older sister, Hannah, she's the golden girl, always has been. Everything she does turns to gold, at least according to my parents. She runs a little handmade candle shop on Etsy that my mom raves about constantly, like she's Martha Stewart or something. Every holiday, every birthday, every single family gathering, it's always Hannah this or Hannah that. Then there's my younger brother, Zach. He's the baby of the family, and you know how that goes? He's 30 now, but still somehow treated like he's 13. He's had more jobs than I can count, none of them lasting. And every time he screws up, my parents jump right in to bail him out. Oh, he needs rent money again? No problem. Car broke down for the third time this year? Here's a check. Meanwhile, there's me. Good old Rachel, the responsible one, the dependable one, the one who pays her own bills and everyone else's too. It's been this way since we were kids. I can still remember being 13, working weekend shifts at the local gas station just to help cover our electric bill after Dad lost his job for the second time. Hannah was too busy with cheerleading, and Zach was just being Zach, playing video games and pretending the world didn't exist. I was the one clipping coupons, handing over my babysitting money for groceries, constantly hearing, "Rachel, you've always been so good with money, sweetheart." And I believed it. I believed being the responsible one was something to be proud of. That it made me valuable, that it meant I mattered. But the truth, it just meant I became their safety net, their backup plan, their human ATM. And as we grew older, the pattern only got worse. By the time I graduated college, without a dime from them, by the way, I'd already started paying for Hannah's mistakes. She got divorced at 27 and couldn't afford her rent. So guess who covered it for 6 months? Zach? Don't even get me started. Between his failed landscaping business, his gaming setup addiction, and his random side hustles, I've loaned him more money than I care to admit. And every time I brought it up, every time I asked why, I was always the one stepping in, my mom would just smile and say, "Well, honey, you've always been so independent. You can handle it. I mean, it's family, right?" That's what I kept telling myself. Family sticks together, family helps each other out, but deep down, I knew it wasn't fair. I knew I was the only one giving while they kept taking. Still, I told myself maybe, just maybe, this retreat would change that. Maybe if I worked hard enough, planned carefully enough, spent enough money to create the perfect weekend, they'd finally appreciate what I did for them. I thought this would be the year they finally saw me, but oh, I couldn't have been more wrong. And you know what? The way this story unfolded, it wasn't just about money anymore. It was about something so much deeper, and I was about to learn just how deep it really went. So here's the part that really stings. You know, the reason I kept saying yes to all their ridiculous requests wasn't because I enjoyed it. It wasn't because I had some superhero complex either. It was because somewhere deep down, I still believed I had to earn my place in this family. I grew up in a tiny town in Kentucky, the kind of place where your family name means everything, where everyone knows your business and loyalty isn't just expected, it's demanded. I spent my whole life believing that if I just kept giving, if I kept showing up, maybe they'd finally treat me like I belonged. And I'm not gonna lie, it's hard to shake that kind of thinking when it's been drilled into your head since you were a kid. My parents used to say this thing every time I questioned why I had to be the one who sacrificed. Family takes care of family. But what they really meant was, Rachel takes care of family, and we take care of ourselves. And the craziest part? I was doing well. Like, really well. I'd built a solid career as a tax consultant. I wasn't driving a fancy car or flashing designer handbags, but I had my own home, no debt, and a thriving business. I worked hard for every penny I had, and yet, every time my phone rang and it was them asking for something, another loan, another favor, another bailout, I answered. Every time they laid on the guilt, saying things like, well, you wouldn't want your brother to be homeless, would you? Or, Hannah's had such a rough year, surely you can help her out. I caved. I kept telling myself it was temporary, that once they got back on their feet, it would stop. But here's the truth no one tells you. People don't stop taking from you just because you've given enough. They only stop when you make them. And trust me, I wasn't ready to make them stop. Not yet. That's why, when I suggested the idea of a family retreat, I thought it was my chance to finally flip the script. I thought maybe, just maybe, if I gave them this perfect, beautiful weekend, paid in full, no strings attached, they'd finally see how much I cared. That they'd finally step up, for once, and share the load. I even brought it up in our family group chat, thinking I was being proactive, responsible, classic Rachel. I laid it all out, my idea for the retreat, the estimated costs, everything planned down to the last detail. I even offered to split the bill equally, just to be fair. And you know what happened? Silence. Hours passed, then days. Not a single person acknowledged my message. No questions, no offers to help, nothing. Finally, my mom chimed in saying, let's figure that out later. Just tell us more about the venue. And like a fool, I let it slide. I kept planning, kept booking, kept paying, hoping they'd come around. Spoiler alert, they didn't. But this wasn't just about them dodging the bill anymore. This was the beginning of something much, much bigger. And I didn't even see it coming. I still remember exactly how it all went down like some twisted movie I can't unsee. After my mom's lovely little, let's figure that out later message, I kept pushing forward. I spent every spare moment planning this thing, like it was my full-time job. I researched venues all across North Carolina, trying to find something that had a little bit of everything for everyone. I mean, I wanted it to be perfect. Mom loves garden spaces, Dad's obsessed with fishing, Hannah needs everything to be Instagram-worthy, and Zach's kids need to be entertained every second or else they'll destroy the place. After weeks of searching, I found it. Willow Springs Retreat. It was gorgeous. Picture-perfect views of the Blue Ridge Mountains, a peaceful pond for Dad, floral gardens that looked like something out of a magazine, hiking trails, a spa, a playground for the kids. It had it all. Of course, it came with a hefty price tag, $3,850 for the weekend, not including food or extras. But when I shared the pictures in our group chat, you would have thought I'd just announced I discovered Atlantis. Hannah gushed over how amazing it looked. Zach chimed in that his boys would love it. Mom sent heart emojis and said, oh, your grandmother would have adored this place. Not a single word about cost, not a peep. When I gently reminded them about splitting expenses, they just ignored me. Literally ignored. They jumped right into discussing the menu instead. Who's gluten-free now? Which kids won't eat veggies? Which caterer makes Mom's favorite lemon chicken? It was like I didn't even mention the fact that this thing was draining my entire summer budget. And yet, I kept going. I spent my lunch breaks calling caterers, arranging for custom place cards, ordering little family keepsakes engraved with Dawson Family Retreat. I even booked a photographer to capture those candid family moments everyone loves to post but never wants to pay for. Every evening after work, I'd sit on my laptop scrolling through endless emails and spreadsheets, double-checking every detail, making sure this weekend would be flawless. I even took a day off work, unpaid, to drive up to the venue and meet with the staff to finalize everything. The venue coordinator, Emma, complimented my organization and said most families end up arguing over details. I just smiled and said, "Oh, my family trusts me with this stuff." God, if only she knew. The worst part? I didn't even resent them yet. Somewhere in my delusional heart, I still believed this would be the time they appreciated me. The time they said thank you, the time they stopped taking me for granted. So when I sent out the final message confirming all, the plans, the payments, and politely asking, again, if they could contribute anything at all, you know what I got back? A thumbs up emoji from Hannah, a heart from Mom. Zach didn't even reply. That's when it hit me. They were never going to change. But what none of us knew at that point, the weekend wasn't going to unfold the way any of us expected. Not even close. The day of the retreat started off like something out of a Hallmark movie. I woke up before the sun, buzzing with this strange mix of excitement and nerves, thinking maybe, just maybe, this would finally be my moment. I had barely slept the night before because I kept going over my checklist again and again in my head, making sure everything was perfect. I got dressed in the soft green sweater dress that I'd bought just for the retreat, something that looked polished but still comfortable, the kind of outfit you wear when you want to look like you have it all together. By 7 a.m., I was already out the door, picking up the catered food I had ordered weeks ago. I made sure everyone's preferences were covered: Mom's lemon chicken, Dad's ribs, Hannah's gluten-free pasta, Zach's picky kids and their never-ending list of restrictions. I even added vegetarian dishes for Hannah's latest boyfriend, who I hadn't even met yet, but apparently couldn't eat anything with a face. As I loaded up my car, the caterer joked that I must really love my family. I laughed politely, but deep down, I wondered if I was the only one doing any loving at all. By 9:30, I arrived at Willow Springs, and let me tell you, it looked like a postcard. The sun was peeking through the trees, the flowers were in full bloom, and everything smelled like fresh mountain air and wildflowers. Emma, the venue coordinator, greeted me with a big smile, saying she couldn't wait to see how everything turned out. Together, we unloaded the food, set up the tables exactly how I had envisioned: personalized place cards with old family photos, fresh flower centerpieces, cozy throw blankets draped over every chair in case it got chilly later in the evening. I even had a slideshow queued up with pictures from past family events: birthdays, Christmas mornings, backyard barbecues. Every little detail was perfect. By 10:30, I had everything in place. The food was warming in the kitchen, the decorations were picture perfect, and the photographer was scheduled to arrive at 11:15, just after everyone settled in. I sat down at the main table, smoothing out my dress, staring at my phone, waiting for the flood of messages from my family saying they were on their way. But there was nothing. No calls, no texts, just silence. At first, I thought maybe they were driving and couldn't text, or maybe there was traffic. I kept checking my phone every minute, refreshing the group chat, refreshing my calls, still nothing. By 11:30, the photographer showed up, cheerful and ready to capture memories. But there were no memories to capture. No one had arrived. No one had even reached out. I started calling them, one by one, my hands shaking as I dialed, straight to voicemail. Every single one of them. Mom, Dad, Hannah, Zach, all unavailable. Finally at noon, I got a text from Zach. Just 3 words. "Oh, that's today?" I could feel my stomach drop. Seconds later, Hannah texted too. "Running late, traffic." But there was no traffic. I had driven that same road earlier that morning without a single delay. That's when I knew something was off. I waited another 30 minutes, sitting there in that beautiful, empty venue, staring at the perfectly set table, watching the photographer awkwardly take photos of flowers and empty chairs. At 12:30, my phone finally rang. It was my mom. I answered immediately, my heart pounding, already knowing I wasn't going to like what I heard. She sounded cheerful, almost giddy, like she didn't have a care in the world. "Oh, honey," she said, "didn't you get our messages?" I told her no. I hadn't gotten anything. I told her I'd been waiting here since morning, that everything was ready and the photographer was here and the food was getting cold. And she laughed. She actually laughed. She said, "Oh, well, plans changed." We all decided to move the gathering to Hannah's cabin instead. It was just easier for everyone, less driving. I was speechless. I couldn't even find the words to respond. She went on, chatting like it was nothing, saying they were all having such a great time at Hannah's, laughing, eating, swimming in her new pool, and that they'd be sure to save me some leftovers. Leftovers. From the retreat I paid for, planned, and set up by myself, I hung up that call in complete shock, staring around at the empty tables, the untouched food, the slideshow I had spent hours putting together, still looping on the screen like some cruel joke. That was the moment something inside me snapped. Not with rage, not with tears, but with this cold, eerie calm I had never felt before. I realized right then that I had spent my entire life trying to earn their love, their approval, their attention. But they were never going to give it. They didn't care. They never had. And sitting there in that empty lodge, surrounded by everything I had poured my heart into, I knew something had to change. I wasn't going to let this go. Not this time. I was done being their doormat, done being their unpaid event planner, their free babysitter, their human wallet. And what I decided to do next? Well, let's just say it was something none of them ever saw coming. I wish I could tell you that I stormed out of that retreat center, yelling and throwing plates or something dramatic like in the movies, but that's not what happened. No, I stayed. I stayed right there in that empty lodge for another hour, just sitting at that big table, staring at the ridiculous family name banner I'd hung over the fireplace. I wasn't even angry anymore. I was just numb. And I think that numbness is what scared me the most. Eventually, I packed everything up. I boxed the untouched food, folded the decorations, and even tipped the photographer for his time, even though there weren't any photos worth keeping. Emma, the venue coordinator, noticed something was off and came over to help. When I told her what had happened, her face softened with this look of pure sympathy that almost broke me. She said she wouldn't charge me the full cleanup fee because, in her words, no one should have to go through something like this. I thanked her, loaded the last box into my car, and drove home in complete silence. No music, no podcasts, just me and my thoughts, and let me tell you, that drive felt like it lasted forever. When I finally pulled into my driveway, I didn't even go inside right away. I sat in my car staring at the digital receipt on my phone. $3,850 gone with nothing to show for it, but a car full of leftovers and decorations no one would ever see. And that was the moment the tears finally came. Not polite, pretty tears. No, I mean ugly, gasping, chest-heaving sobs. The kind where you can't even breathe. All of it just hit me at once. The years of being the responsible one, the years of bailing everyone out, the years of thinking if I just tried harder, they'd finally see me. And now here I was sitting alone in my driveway with nothing but cold food and a shattered heart. After I finally dragged myself inside, I got a text from Lily, my best friend since college, the only person who's ever seen through my family's nonsense. She'd been waiting to hear how the retreat went, completely unaware of the disaster that had unfolded. When I told her everything, every detail from the empty venue to the phone call to the leftover comment, there was this long pause on the other end of the line. And then she said the words that flipped a switch in my brain. Rachel, she said, your family treats you like an ATM. That's it. They press a few buttons, guilt, obligation, family loyalty, and out comes the cash. And honestly, I think they're gonna keep doing it until you finally shut the machine down. Her words hit me like a freight train because deep down, I knew she was right. I just didn't know how to do it. But Lily wasn't done. She told me something else that I'll never forget. She said, one day, they're gonna push too far, and when that happens, you'll know exactly what to do. And you know what? She was right again. Because that day, that retreat, that was my line in the sand. That was the day I realized I wasn't just tired, I wasn't just hurt. I was done. Done playing the role they expected. Done giving without boundaries. Done pretending it didn't affect me. I knew I couldn't keep living like this. And that's when it hit me. If I was going to break the cycle, I had to start where it always started, with the money. So that night, still surrounded by boxes of untouched food and crumpled decorations, I opened my laptop, took a deep breath, and started making a plan. A plan that was going to change everything. A plan that would finally force them to see the cost of their actions, not just in dollars, but in everything they've taken from me over the years. And what I found as I started digging? It shocked even me. I didn't sleep that night, not even for a minute. I sat on my living room floor, surrounded by all the evidence of that failed retreat, and I started pulling up every single bank statement, every Venmo transfer, every credit card charge related to my family. I wasn't just looking at the retreat anymore. I wanted to know exactly how much I had poured into them over the years. And let me tell you, it was worse than I ever imagined. I went back 5 years, just 5, because honestly, I couldn't stomach digging further than that. I started adding it all up, line by line, month by month. Hannah's rent after her divorce, Zach's endless loans for his business ideas, the down payments for family vacations, medical bills for dad's surgeries, mom's kitchen renovation that she somehow convinced me was an investment for future family gatherings. The numbers kept growing and growing and growing, and when I hit the total, I had to close my eyes for a second just to breathe. $84,326. 84,000. My chest tightened as I stared at that number on the screen, knowing exactly what it meant. That was my down payment for a house. That was a luxury car, paid in full. That was my student loans, wiped clean twice over. And here I was still driving my 10-year-old car and living in a modest rental because every time I got ahead, they pulled me back down. But the part that really crushed me wasn't the money. It was the realization that I'd been sacrificing my entire future for people who wouldn't even show up to a retreat I paid for. That's when I knew I had to send a message. Not just words, not just another guilt-filled argument. No, it had to be something they couldn't ignore. So I opened my financial planning software, the same one I use for my clients, and I started drafting invoices. Real invoices. Professional, itemized, polite, but firm. I added everything: the retreat costs, the past loans, the unpaid family favors. I even included their share of the food and decorations they never touched. And then I put my personal logo at the top, Dawson Financial Consulting, because if they were going to treat me like a business, I was going to act like one. When I showed the invoices to Lily later that night, she nearly spit out her wine. "You're actually sending these?" she asked, half shocked, half impressed. I nodded. "It's not about getting this money back," I told her. "It's about showing them exactly what they've taken, about drawing a line in black and white." She grinned and said, "Honestly, I hope they lose their minds over it." So I attached each invoice to a personalized message and sat there for a long time, staring at my phone, feeling that familiar swirl of doubt creeping in. Was I going too far? Was this really worth it? But then I remembered my mom's voice, laughing in my ear, offering me leftovers from my own retreat. And just like that, I hit send. One invoice for Hannah, one for Zach, one for mom and dad. No explanations, no apologies, just clear numbers and payment details. And then I put my phone on silent, poured myself a glass of wine, and sat back, knowing full well the storm was coming. But for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of it. In fact, I was ready to watch it burn. The first phone call came exactly 3 minutes after I hit send. It was my mom, of course, and I let it go straight to voicemail. Then dad called, then Hannah, then Zach. My phone was blowing up like it was the 4th of July. I didn't answer a single one. I wasn't about to let them twist this into some screaming match where I'd end up apologizing again. No, this time they could sit with their shock. The next morning, I woke up to over 40 missed calls and more texts than I could count. I made myself coffee, sat down at my kitchen table, and started reading through them, one by one, like I was flipping through fan mail. My mom's first voicemail was furious, her voice shaking as she demanded to know what the hell these invoices were and who I thought I was. My dad's was a little softer, more confused than angry, asking me to please explain because your mother is very upset. Hannah's messages were a roller coaster, first indignant, then dismissive, then panicked. And Zach? Oh, Zach's message was just him laughing, saying, "Good one, sis. You almost had me." They clearly thought this was a joke. So I did the only thing I knew how to do. I called my mom back first. She picked up before the first ring finished, already yelling, "Rachel Dawson, you better explain yourself right now. Invoices to your own family?" I kept my voice calm, steady, like I was explaining a tax document to a difficult client. "Good morning, Mom," I said. "Yes, I sent invoices. I assume you received yours." She scoffed so loud I had to pull the phone away from my ear. "You've completely lost it. No one sends invoices to family." I smiled, even though she couldn't see it. Apparently, no one shows up for family retreats they agreed to either. But here we are. She gasped, but I didn't stop. "I've spent over $84,000 on this family in the past 5 years, and I kept quiet about it. I organized everything, paid for everything, covered everyone's emergencies, and you know what I got in return? Leftovers." There was a long pause. I could practically hear her scrambling to come up with something to say. "Well, no one asked you to spend that money," she finally muttered, like that excused everything. I let out a soft laugh. "Actually, you all did, over and over, and when I asked for help, you ignored me. So these invoices aren't a punishment, they're a boundary. From now on, every expense is shared, every contribution is documented, and if anyone doesn't want to participate, that's fine, but they won't get to enjoy the benefits either." She called me selfish, dramatic, heartless, all the usual greatest hits. I didn't argue. I just repeated, calmly, that the invoices stood. And then I hung up. One down, three to go. Dad called next. His approach was softer, more pleading. He asked if we could just forget this whole thing and move on. I told him no, that I wasn't doing this to stir up drama. I was doing this because I deserved respect, and if money was the only language they understood, then fine, we'd speak it. Then came Hannah. Oh, Hannah was a masterpiece. She ranted for 10 straight minutes about how ridiculous and petty I was, how I was ruining the family, how I clearly needed therapy. I let her finish, then simply said, "You didn't think it was ridiculous when I paid your rent, or your wedding photographer, or your spa weekends? You only think it's ridiculous now because the bill finally landed at your door." She hung up on me. Classic Hannah. Zach finally called that evening, and honestly, his call surprised me the most. He didn't yell, he didn't laugh, he just sighed and said, "Look, I don't have the money right now, and I doubt I ever will. But you're right, we've been using you, I'll figure something out." And you know what? That hit harder than all the yelling in the world. But I wasn't backing down. I told him I'd accept a payment plan if he was serious, but the boundaries stayed, no exceptions. He agreed, slowly, hesitantly, but he agreed. And just like that, I realized something. They weren't angry because I was wrong. They were angry because I was finally right. Because I'd stopped playing their game, and the moment I hung up that last call, I knew this wasn't the end of the story, not by a long shot, because my family, they were about to learn exactly what it felt like when the bank closes for good. The weeks that followed were strangely quiet. No calls, no texts, no passive-aggressive Facebook posts. It was like my family had collectively decided to go into hiding. And honestly, it was peaceful. The group chat, normally buzzing with messages about birthday dinners or who needed help with car repairs, went completely dead. And every time I looked at that empty chat, I felt lighter. It was uncomfortable at first, like I was walking around with this giant empty space in my chest where all the old guilt used to sit. But that space, it didn't feel bad. It felt free. Then, out of nowhere, my dad was the first to break the silence. One afternoon, I got a notification from my bank. He had paid his invoice in full, along with a short note that simply said, "I'm sorry." No drama, no extra words, just those two little words that I'd been waiting to hear for years. A few days later, my mom transferred her share too. No message, of course, just the money. Classic her. Zach surprised me even more. He called and told me he'd set up a weekly payment plan, $50 every Friday, until his invoice was paid off. He didn't make excuses, he didn't beg for a discount. He just said, "It's only fair." And then, almost like it was nothing, he asked if I could help him set up a budget, a real one. I swear I nearly dropped my phone, but I agreed because, for the first time in my life, he wasn't asking for a handout. He was asking for help the right way. Hannah, of course, held out the longest. No calls, no texts, nothing but silence and icy glares in every family group photo that popped up online from distant relatives. But 3 weeks after everyone else had paid, a new notification popped up. Her full invoice, paid in one lump sum, no note, no apology. Just money. And honestly, that was fine by me. Aunt June, my dad's older sister, the only family member who had ever truly seen me, called me almost every week during that time just to check in. She'd been quietly watching everything unfold from the sidelines, and every time we talked, she'd tell me how proud she was. She said, "Rachel, this might have shaken the family up, but it was the wake-up call they needed. And honestly, I think your grandma would have been cheering you on." And you know what? I believed her. But the real test came a few months later. Thanksgiving. Normally, I would have been the one planning everything. Buying the turkey, coordinating who brought what, decorating the table, and paying for whatever anyone else forgot. But this year, nope. Not my circus. My mom sent out a group text, polite, tentative, asking if I would be attending Thanksgiving at their house. I replied with exactly 7 words. "Sure, what would you like me to bring?" That was it. No offers to plan, no overextending myself, just a simple, healthy boundary. And guess what? She responded with a clear, direct request. No guilt, no backhanded comments, just, "Please bring your famous sweet potato casserole." So I did. And that Thanksgiving dinner, it was the most peaceful holiday we'd had in years. Everyone contributed something, everyone helped with cleanup, no one joked about me being the planner or asked me to cover their costs. And for the first time in my adult life, I sat at that table feeling like an actual member of the family. Not their wallet, not their fallback plan, just Rachel. After dinner, as we sat around drinking coffee and eating pie, my mom pulled me aside in the kitchen. She looked uncomfortable, like she was chewing on words she'd never said out loud before. And then she said, I've been thinking about what you said about boundaries, about fairness, and you were right. I didn't say anything. I just let her speak. She kept going, admitting that they had relied on me too much for too long, that they hadn't realized how much they'd taken until they saw it all spelled out in black and white. It wasn't exactly an apology, but it was something. And honestly, it was enough. Because here's the truth I've learned through all of this. Sometimes the biggest revenge isn't making people pay you back. It's making them change how they see you, and that's exactly what happened. I stopped being the family doormat, and somewhere along the way, they started seeing me as a person again. Not just the responsible one, not just the helper, just Rachel. And as I left that night, walking out into the crisp autumn air, I realized something else too. Those invoices? They weren't just about the money. They were about respect, about healing, about finally setting myself free. And the best part, I knew I'd never have to send another one again, because now they knew better, and so did I.